What's up, everybody? It's Kent C. Dodds again. I want to talk with you all about becoming product engineers, and with me is my friend Jamon Holmgren. How are you, Jamon?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Kent.
I'm thrilled to have you. We go way back.
Yeah,
Goodness, we probably met back. Was it maybe React Rally 2015 or something?
it was in that. I wasn't at React Rally, but I know that we had you at my conference, Chain React, in 2017. So wow, that's almost a decade ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. This time flies, man. And
Yeah,
so, I just, it's been such a pleasure to know you. And I feel like you're a very down to earth, practical person. And with the amount of experience that you've got, I think you have a lot to share with folks about being excellent product engineers. So, why don't you give yourself or our audience a little bit of an intro to you to fill up their context window a little bit?
I like how that works for AI agents as well as people. So I'm Jamon Holmgren. I'm one of the founders of Infinite Red. We are a 30-person consultancy. All we've done is React Native. I go way back to coding. I'm 44 now. I've been coding since I was like 11 or 12. Started with BASIC on Commodore 64 and Apple IIes in our elementary computer lab, and kind of always I just loved it from the very beginning, and I've been writing code ever since. Mostly made little games and stuff as I was a kid, and then but didn't really think that I was going to do it as a career until I was 23. The websites were becoming more of a thing. It was 2005-ish, and people were shifting, like small businesses were shifting from advertising in like the yellow pages to like, I guess we need to have a website. And so I started building websites for various people that I knew, that my dad knew, people like that, and doing them for just a little nothing. But to me, I just felt like, wow, people are paying me to do this thing that I do for free. That's crazy.
Yeah, it
And
really is. I love this.
I know, right? Like, we got a good gig, and it was just a lot of fun. So ended up building a business, a consultancy. Uh, Started obviously with web, doing a lot of PHP and technology like that. Switched over to Ruby on Rails. Eventually started doing some iOS programming, native programming, and then from there, when we started Infinite Red 10 years ago now, it was all in on React Native.
Mm.
So I have 4 kids. My oldest is 21, and he's also a programmer, and he has a little family himself. He's married and has a kid, so I'm a grandpa as well.
Wow.
And she's almost a year and a half, she's just amazing. Every time that she comes over, she just lights everything up. So that's kind of me. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I play some rec hockey as a goalie. I'm making a game right now. It's a combat helicopter game called Gunship Origins, published by Microprose, the legendary company from way back, which
That's
is a dream
cool.
come true. And trying to keep up with everything. It's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, you're busy.
Yeah. It's a little too busy right now, trying to scale back on some things.
Yeah. So, with Infinite Red, like over a
Mhm.
decade now,
Yeah.
let's dive into that a little bit. So, what is Infinite Red? What do you do as a company? And the reason I want to dive into this, I'm not just advertising for my buddy's company here,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
but there's a specific reason that I thought that you could provide a lot of value on how
Mhm.
to be a good product engineer because of what you do at Infinite Red.
Yeah, it really goes back to my first company when I was 23, because I ran that for 10 years, and that was a consultancy, and we were building products for people, and I really felt like in the very early days, I was doing a lot more product because people didn't know what was even possible with web.
Mm,
Like, they didn't know that you could build web apps. That wasn't really a thing. You built a website, right? Like, that was it. And then it's like, oh no, you can actually build a web app. That's when like Basecamp started coming in, and these types of SaaS type uh, applications. And so one of my earliest projects that I did, I think it started in like 2007 or so, was actually I play hockey with this guy still to this day, 20 years later. But he wanted like a dashboard to manage his sales and stuff like that. And so he was doing a lot of the product work, kind of thinking what he wanted and everything. But I would add a lot of details myself. I added this really cool chat feature and notes feature and stuff. And they still use this to this day, which is pretty cool. I'll come
Nice.
back to that because he's rebuilding it now himself with AI, which is very cool. He's not a
Yeah,
programmer.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's just a really cool idea. But then, bring it forward to Infinite Red. I'd run it, my company by myself. It was like 14 people ish, something like that. And it was very stressful. It was a lot to try to run everything myself. And so I ended up merging with another company that was a competitor at the time. And so Todd Worth and Gant Laborde are my business partners, and we decided to really specialize in React Native and mobile in particular. And it's interesting because, yeah, I've worked with many different companies over the years. With the new Infinite Red, we really moved up market and started working with bigger companies, more enterprise, more like mid cap to enterprise type of companies. And the bottleneck often for us in particular, in a lot of projects, the bottleneck is the programming. It's like you want to really optimize for reduce the amount of time. At least this was true up until recently, where you
Yeah.
reduce the amount of time that the programmer has to spend coding because it's so costly to tear things out and redo them and everything. So what I've noticed over the years is that there are plenty of companies that don't really devote enough resources or talent to the product side of things. And as a
Mhm.
programmer, you do end up having to do that a lot, but it's really tough to balance that with being highly technical, because that's its own full-time job to try to be good at programming and to be productive at programming, even if you're doing stuff that
Mm.
you've done many, many, many times. I mean, there's tons of things that we've done over the years building project generators, or things like component generators, or a lot of like open source libraries are attempts to just like we've solved this problem many times. Like, why can't we just have something prepackaged out there? Let's pull it in, and not have to solve this problem once again and spend a bunch of engineering time on it, because the engineering time is expensive and it's really
Mhm.
tough. And so product a lot of times was underinvested in relative to that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get to it, but it feels like now people are kind of waking up to that. Like it's now just so obvious that product is the bottleneck, and often the difference between doing things well and not doing things well. And in fact, this brings to mind, prior to being in tech, I actually did home design, and I would often lament to my wife that people will kind of cheap out on home design before building like a many hundreds of thousands of dollar house. They're like
Yikes.
spending all this time, and you can't just change it. Like, it's not easy to
Yeah.
change a house. And I'm like, why aren't they spending more time on design? Like, sit there and actually figure out where all of your electrical outlets should go. It's hard to do
Mm.
afterwards, so just figure it out. Like, spend the time. But people won't do it, and it's a lot. That's kind of product, design, product engineering as well.
Yeah. Wow. So many things I want to dig into that. But I actually really appreciate the um, relation to home design, because I think that this is a very similar thing, despite the fact that in software you really can just rip down the wall and do something again, and it's it's less expensive. But when you're doing that, you can't be doing other things, and so like it does matter. One thing that explicit or specifically stood out to me, or a thought that I had as you were talking, it seems like with implementation becoming so much easier, cheaper, faster, um, we like developers of all shapes and sizes, or in companies of all shapes and sizes, are kind of becoming a little bit more like the consulting company, where that bottleneck of getting the product right becomes a lot more important. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It for us, like, we're definitely putting a lot of thought into how we make this transition as well, as consultants, because what we've really built the company on is engineering, selling engineering time and expertise, and in a particular vertical. And while I think we have some level of protection against that, just by the nature of React Native's hard and mobile's hard, and it's not as maybe well known, it still is going to be a transition for us. But there are definitely parallels here where you're almost looking at the agents as consultants in some ways, and you have to be thinking about how you're managing their time or managing their their productivity, I guess, not so much time, and how do you interact with them, and how do you ensure quality, and all of these things. There's a lot of similar aspects to consulting there. And there's some consulting companies that will have internal resources for this, like they'll have business analysts and product people and design and all of that. In fact, that's what my first company had a little more of. We were still pretty programming heavy, but we did have some of that. Where Infinite Red is really, it's like all programmers pretty much, except for some support staff. So there's definitely a transition happening here, and I'm seeing some parallels, like you said. I'm actually really curious what you think about this too, because I'm trying to. I mean, we had a phone call like, I don't know, a month or two ago or something where we chatted a little bit, because I was just like, I want to know what you're seeing, Ken.
Yeah, like this transition, of course, is changing things for everybody. I think though that I think everybody's going to be okay. um, for the experienced engineer, there are elements of our technical expertise that really just they're not valuable at all,
Mm-hmm.
not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Like knowing the right kind of variable name, for a variable, like I've invested a lot of time in deciding,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how do we communicate through the code, the intent, and all of that. And I'm sure that there are people yelling at their speakers right now, like, no, it still matters. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it
Yeah.
hasn't mattered to me for a little bit. But okay. But yeah, so there are those kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
that used to matter. But we've always had stuff like that. Like I have a lot of knowledge, or that I used to have, on AngularJS version
Mm-hmm.
1 and on Webpack, and like all of these things. Like we're always losing relevance in things that we know. Um, I don't think that AI is completely eliminating the human element at all. And so in this industry, we've always been learning and acquiring new skills. And often those skills are built on top of the skills we had before. For a product engineer, having deeply technical understanding helps you kind of ask the right questions to get clarity to a problem. And so like if you've spent your entire career as just I take this Jira ticket and I turned it into an implementation, and that's all you know how to do, there are like some things, like the foundational things, that you're still going to be able to
Yeah.
leverage in this future. Maybe agents and harnesses and AI LLMs get better so much that those skills don't matter quite as much anymore, but I wouldn't bank on that anytime soon. But maybe. But there is a skill that I do think you get even as a ticket converter, in being able to like convert the incomplete thoughts from the stakeholders
Yeah.
into an actual product.
Yes, exactly. Because you know what a good ticket is and what it isn't, because you've had to navigate that from the other side, and so you
Mhm.
can kind of look at it and say, would this be enough information for me? Would this be enough
Mhm.
information? I spent a lot of time writing specifications, actually. Like, I published a thing called Night Shift on my website, which basically is kind of how I like to work. And a big part of it is that I'm not like I'm writing a lot of the specs myself, um like to where I would be able to implement. Like I know enough about it. Now, it's not
Mhm.
everybody wants to go that deep, and it depends on the type of software too, because there's some stuff I just never look at the code. I could barely even tell you what stack it is. Um And then there's things like, I mean, you know, my game, and then certainly client projects where the quality of the code still matters to me, and
Mm-hmm.
long-term maintainability, and
Mm-hmm.
even just making sure I've covered my bases, you know, as fully as I can. And so knowing the implementation side has been very, very helpful there. But it is hard though, because I don't think I've ever been just a person that takes a ticket and turns it into, like, I've always had some input to give, and that's what my clients have liked. Like, they've liked the
Yeah,
fact that
that's what they pay you for.
yeah, exactly. It'll be like, did you think of this? Did you think of that? What's hilarious is now I find myself appreciating that about the agent, when the agent says, there's a good plan, but you're missing these parts, you know, because I still run an agent on it. And even if I've spent like 4 hours on a specification, which I do, it always finds holes. It always finds things that I'm missing. So I appreciate that about it. It is kind of, I don't know, like, nobody really knows the future right now, like how far these things will go,
Mm-hmm.
or how fast, really, because it's maybe it's inevitable that it's heading a certain direction, but it's more about how fast it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then the skills are definitely changing. I even think about for my own game, like, would I hire a programmer if I had the budget to just hire a programmer for my game? I would hire a programmer, but not to program.
Mm-hmm. What do
Like,
you mean?
I would love to hire my son to come help me with the game, but I want his, like, game design. I want his product knowledge. I want his ability to maybe just test things and even just look at the code and see if it's good. It's that cross section between, I love that he has coding experience and knows good code from bad code, but I don't really need him to code. That's not the bottleneck right now. I'm not coding a lot. I'm doing some, but it's you know, like, it's usually where the fact that I'm using Godot and it's not as, LLMs aren't as good as they are at, like, TypeScript or Python. That's really where the only place that I'm really applying a lot of the direct coding knowledge.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like I still do things like I will sometimes rename variables or things like that. But that's really just with an eye toward the future of, like, okay, I know that this variable, if it conveys intent properly, the LLM is less likely to just do the wrong thing. And that's really the only thing I care about. What's hilarious is I would never name them that for myself. My
Mm.
coding style and my preferences are actually different than what I do for an LLM.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm
So
really short and cryptic with variable names, and people hate it, but it's just how I like. I optimize code for scanning, like for
mm,
vertical scanning. I like wide lines that go really far to the right, that do one thing. So I can just
mm,
scan and find one thing, and then if I need to drill deeper, I go to the right. So many programmers hate this,
that's
but this is just how I do
interesting.
things.
Yeah, I think I would hate that too. But good thing we don't have to look at the code as
No,
much
we don't
anymore.
have to. Yeah, it's fine. Like, let the LLM put, 400 short lines in there, if that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. So you mentioned you'd be interested in hiring your son, and that made me wonder.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, he's your son, and you'd love that too.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as like hiring a developer to help you on your game
Hmm.
for their like product and testing and stuff, it made me wonder: is that kind of just a stopgap? Like, will agents? And you mentioned earlier also, like, you like it when the agent asks you, "Hey, did you think about this and that?"
Hmm.
And that's like kind of a product engineer skill, is to like forecast into the future
Yeah.
what problems there could be. And I've definitely noticed this myself as well. So do you think that there is something uniquely human that agents will never be able to replace, or will agents eventually be able to just be product engineers?
I think there's something uniquely human that agents can't fully reproduce. And we see this when we give the agents the happiest path we can, where it's like the thing that they're the most trained on, the best possible solution. They know this stuff. It's not, you don't have to provide a lot of guardrails. You do it in the happiest possible path. And but if you don't provide the right kind of guidance, you end up with something that is just not that compelling, not that good. Maybe there's some things that they'll do that, like, is cooler than maybe you would have come up with. So it's
Mm,
probably a little bit of a dance between the two. But as an example, right now, so I actually tried. Matt Pocock has this thing where you can do this, like, I forget what it's called. I think it's a skill where it like asks you a bunch of
Grill me.
questions. Oh yeah, it's that grill me. Yeah. And I used it to see, like how far I could go with this. I found that I'm sitting here making all these product decisions, just one right after another, and it's asking me these questions, finer and finer grained. I got very exhausted doing it. It was
Yeah.
all good. It was like good, but it was exhausting work. And it was stuff that
Mm.
I think there were some times where I would just say, what do you think? And it could make a decision. Right. And maybe there's
Uh-huh.
some of those things it could, but a lot of times it wouldn't make the right decision. And maybe there's a point where it would, but I don't understand where it would get that information from, because this isn't stuff that's like common training data. You'd have to really find some way to extract that from the human experience. And I think there's, like, us, like we have the advantage of being human. The AI does not and never will. It can be trained on
Mhm.
human stuff, but it's always a window into what a human is and what a human likes. And I think that our the fact that, not, of course, not every human has great taste. That would maybe apply to everybody. Maybe it's great
Mhm.
taste for themselves, but not to everybody. And so there's that aspect as well. But we do have an in like this sort of intuition that we can apply to this stuff. And so when I think about it, like, if I hired Cedric, my son, and said, like, go make the dynamic campaign really, really good, and we just had just an amazing AI that could just take these grill me questions and just kind of like roll forward with it. I'd need him to do that. I don't have the energy to sit there and answer all of those questions, and I don't think
Mhm.
the AI is going to answer those questions the right way or the way that I want it to all the time. So that's my conjecture where I'm at. I think it's actually going to get more important, because ultimately there's a lot more software that should exist in the world. Weirdly, people
Mhm.
like, it sounds weird, like, wow, there's too much already. No, that's not true. We we in the programming world are overserved by far. We have the
Mm. Yep.
coolest toys, and we always make the coolest stuff for ourselves. And when programmers come up with business ideas, it's always something to do with better programming or better, all those types of things. And I'm no different. I mean, I have a consultancy. That's what it is. We do programming. Uh, but but you just go ask your brother-in-law who works at a car dealer or something and just say, how good's your software? And just watch them go, it's so bad.
Yeah.
Everybody in every industry is like, this software is so bad. It just has the dumb. I mean, my brother works at a home builder, and he said that his software, like, to maximize the screen, you have to click a button, watch it grow a little bit and refresh. It's slow. You have to click the button again, and it's just like, you can't just hit a button and maximize the screen. That's how bad this software is. And they pay a lot of money for this. So, like, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities there for sure. Um, I I think that actually um, being exhausted with those grill me questions
Mm-hmm.
is very relatable. And even if we were to say, you know what, the LLM is going to get really good at this, it's going to make uh, make the right decisions and stuff. When you get to the final product, it's probably not going to be exactly what the user wanted. So like let's just say, okay, our industry doesn't exist anymore. People are making their own custom software. It probably isn't going to be the right thing. And so then they're going to say, hey, here's some more feedback, here's some more feedback. And like that process is exhausting. Like I already do that with things that I'm vibe coding, right? I'm just like, okay, build it, and then we can iterate. And that part is exhausting too. And so even if the agents get so good that they're making all the right decisions for a given set of assumptions. I think finding what the right assumptions are is maybe something that's uniquely human. Maybe not, but at least something that I can say is that that skill was useful 50 years ago. And it's probably the last skill that will continue to be useful as long as our industry is still a
Yeah.
thing.
You know, it's I could not agree more. And so my game is based on a game that was published in 1991, so it's 35 years old, called Gunship 2000. And it so the original game designer, Jim Day, I actually have become friends with him. and he's so before that he was a board game designer. He had like a regular career as well. Then he did a few games. He did Gunship 2000. He did like Strike Eagle 3. I think he worked on a couple other things that are really well known. I mean, I think he only worked on really successful stuff, and he was the principal game designer, which is very much like a product designer or product manager type of thing. And so he and I have had multiple phone calls. He just emailed me yesterday. He's going to be sending me like an early manual that they had and stuff. It's very cool. But what's
fun.
really cool about it is, like, I'm very impressed with the programming that was done. This is the 80s and 90s that they were building this stuff, and the programming that they were able to do with very limited hardware and everything is unbelievable. But I'm much more interested in what Jim has to say than the programmer. Just because the way he thinks about things is still so relevant to today, 35 years later, to have such relevancy in, I mean, it underscores your point. It's like, that's really what matters. There's so much taste that has to be put into what the game should be. He has very strong opinions about things. He would very much like stand on, like, there's a little bit of like a programmer versus game designer back in those days, especially, where maybe, it's probably still today, where it was like the programmers would say, we don't need a game designer, I know how to make a game, type of thing. But he would be like, no, we have to have this in the game. And it ended up being, I mean, I think one of the greatest games of all time. Back in the day, it was very, very popular. It's kind of a little more forgotten today, but this is stuff where having that taste and having that, it's just, it's very relevant.
Yeah. I think that we've done a pretty good job establishing how valuable product engineering is as a skill, but I would like to get into like some specific things that product manage or product engineering skills, like what they are, what makes a good product engineer. And so one thing that I think is interesting about what you do at Infinite Red and your previous consulting company is just the amount of time you spend gathering requirements and communicating with the stakeholders. So can you tell us a little bit about what those meetings are like, and how you manage bringing clarity to this amorphous problem space, when often maybe the client doesn't exactly know what they want either?
I'll start with a major failure that I had with my previous company. I built this very large MRP, like a manufacturing kind of system for it was cabinets. It was like they had 3 production lines. It's this local company, and they would get orders in from home builders as well as just people doing remodels or whatever. And if you've ever built a house or done a kitchen remodel, you know that kitchens are full of decisions everywhere.
Yep.
And you can make a lot of wrong decisions very easily, and you can have a bunch of assumptions that are wrong. And so there was sort of the sales part of it, which I had done previously, but this was the manufacturing part. And I worked with one guy who was fun to work with, and he had a lot of great ideas and everything. But I kind of just leaned on him to do a lot of the stakeholder gathering, and everything. And that ended up being a pretty big mistake, because ultimately a lot of these systems that you build, they fail because of lack of adoption, because people get what you've built and they're like, this isn't what I need. Like, my old system's better. And you're like, but this one's so slick and whatever. And they're like, yeah, but you don't have this button that I need, or you don't have this way of doing things that I need, or you've thought about this whole problem the wrong way. And they did end up using the system, but it was only like certain departments, and they were the ones that were closest to this guy, the ones that he knew really well. The departments that it was supposed to run all of this stuff, and the departments that were not directly involved with providing feedback and kind of like getting some ownership, they just refused to use it. And it was like, I can't use this. It's not even though I thought I did a good job, and I had a lot of great ideas in there, there's this amazing scheduler, automated scheduler that could optimize the three, like, manufacturing lines super well. Well, it turns out that there were a bunch of wrong assumptions that
Mm.
I and the other guy had made. And so that pain was like, okay, um you have to go talk to people, you have to get them invested in it, you have to get their feedback, and their feedback's not going to feel good because you were like, I worked hard on this and now they're telling me that it sucks, and I have to go change it. But you have to get immersed in that and feel, I mean, honestly, the product designers and just designers in general that I've worked with that are the best are the ones that can really take feedback and incorporate it. It's not necessarily that the ideas that people have are what you just do by rote. It's more that you're hearing the underlying, problems that they're having with it. And so the successful projects that we've had since that time really involve us like kind of insisting on, who are the stakeholders. Let's get this in front of them, and let's get their feedback, and let's also kind of explain the overall vision of, so they can get on board with like why we're doing this. And also kind of, it's a lot of human stuff because you have to explain that there's going to be trade-offs. Like maybe in some cases, some departments are going to take a step back. Like we just don't have the time to make something better for you, but we're not going to take too big of a step back. Like it's going to be as good as we can make it. And the overall vision, we're going to move forward with this. And then, can be a little bit of a hard sell, but those are the types of things that I think really, really are important. And then just having a broad exposure and some opinions about things, like making sure that, I mean, there's so many little interactions. You've seen this kind of like over your career where there'll be things like tool tips. When you hover over a tool tip and you go to the next one, that delay before it shows the next one, it should only be on the first one. Like the next one should show right away, type of thing. That's just a little programming thing you have to do. I have an opinion around a lot of buttons where you click a button and a lot of times there'll be a confirm that pops up in the middle of the screen. I like to just change the button into a confirm question mark for like 5 seconds, like click again. Right. And
I've got a React hook called use double click or use double check.
Yeah, exactly. Like I love that, and I don't see it enough. Like it should exist in more things, I think. Instead, people lazily just throw a confirm up and kind of go from there. But it's not that much more work to do the double click thing, especially with with tools like what you've got. So opinions like that, like just shave off sand off the sharp edges here and there, make it pleasant, delightful. Don't like overuse animations, use it sparingly where it needs to happen. A lot of this stuff is you have to learn design, you have to learn UX, all that stuff. But yeah, so I think it can be from either kind of that. It should sort of be the whole package of like getting people on board, getting all the feedback, being open to feedback, being able to change, and then also just having some opinions about how the software should look and feel, and spending the time to make it feel great.
Yeah, there's a lot that resonates with me in that. One thing you were talking about how like kitchens are just so many decisions in there, and I did recently build a kitchen, and one of the things that I really liked about my builder is that they gave us a designer. Like we had an architect and like the general manager, like all that, but we had a designer who was with us at literally every meeting, and so she was able to just gather all of this context into herself of what our preferences were. And so instead of giving us, okay, now we're going to talk about the position of the microwave, like instead of giving us 3,000 different options, which that is how many options you have, not just the position, but like which microwave, all that. And she said, like, based on what she knows about us, here are 3 options. Which ones of these do you like? And then she knows with the breadth of experience that she has, like if we do it here, then she can tell us, now, if you do it that way, then this is going to be a problem for this or whatever. And I think that that is the sort of thing that an experienced software developer can offer in that kind of a relationship where we are the liaison between the stakeholder who doesn't have the technical know-how and the agent that is going to ultimately be building this. And of course, like, we're going to be taking part in that process as well. But that, like, that gap, I think, um, it's not closed now, that's for sure. And I think that that will remain open and valuable
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I see it as like our workflow. To me, I feel like our workflow is changing to something that looks more in the order of going in and talking to stakeholders, demoing stuff, testing things, really kind of writing out specifications and feedback and things like that, and then going to implementation and making sure that we've thought through how the implementation should work because of our engineering knowledge. That's where we can bring a lot of value to the table. Obviously, there are existing designers, UX designers, UI designers, and product people who can do a lot of this stuff and are already good at it, right? Like they can already do these things. The unique thing that we bring as more kind of product engineers is that we have done implementation by hand, at least so far. Maybe there will be a generation where that's just not true, but
Mhm.
um, but you know, for us graybeards, you know, we have that, and so we can come in and translate that between and between what the stakeholders have in the implementation side of things. So then our workflow then, okay, it goes and it implements. I'm a big fan of writing out, having good enough docs, having good enough validations and tests, and linting and all of these things. MCP servers, like you've been working on some cool stuff. You know, whatever we can do to make the agent's job or agents turnaround better work, putting our time into that and making that really, really, really good. And then kicking off the agent, making sure that it has what it needs, and then coming back afterward and doing a bunch of rather than kind of the interactive stuff, which is kind of exhausting in its own way. Then come back, review it, you know, do our own tweaks, and then go back to stakeholders, demo again, get feedback again. And so there's a cycle there. And however long that cycle is, whether it's weekly, probably more like daily because of the speed that we can go now.
Mhm.
And but also not too fast. Like I think there's a temptation because of how intoxicating the speed is to skip steps and just be like, I'm going to skip this step, I'm going to skip that step. I wouldn't skip steps. It's okay to be 5 times as fast. You don't need to be 10 times as fast.
Yeah, it definitely is intoxicating. That's for sure. I've pulled a couple all-nighters, and I have not done that in a long time. And it's
Right?
not because, like, I'm under the gun or anything like that. It's
No,
just, it's so fun.
it's so much fun. Yeah. I not to like shill my way of doing things too much, because I do think everybody has to find their own way. But the sort of night shift way of doing it is the only thing that's allowed me to just have a moment that's fun leaving, because that's when I
Mm.
kick off the agent. It's actually fun to leave work. And so I've got everything lined up and I'm like, I'm going to kick it off. It's fun. I've got 25 things for it to do. I've got 10 things for it to do. And then in the morning I get in and it's fun because now I'm opening the present of like, what did it do? You know, and maybe it did it bad, but a lot of times it does good stuff. And then I'm reviewing. So that was the thing I had to do for my personality, because otherwise I'd stay up all night. I was exactly the same as you. Like I got to keep these going. I'm at dinner with my kids, my wife or whatever. And then I'm like running upstairs to like, Claude's not working right now. It's like, come on,
Yeah.
you know, like I don't like that.
Yeah, my problem is cursor cloud agents make it so that I can do this from my phone. And so, like, wherever I am, I just, like, pull out my phone and let me see,
Yeah.
like,
I
how this
have
agent do.
I've mostly resisted that. There's a couple of times where I've had some things going like that, but I actually intentionally was like, if I put this on my phone, I'm never putting my phone down. I gotta stop. I gotta have some place to stop. I know my personality.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is fun, and I think also, like, we talk about us experienced engineers having a lot of value to offer. I think, like, there are people in the last even just a few months. That's a lot of people who have started in the industry who don't know a different world. I think that there is still a place for juniors in this industry. Um, And in the same way that when we were juniors, we accumulated knowledge and began to deliver actual value, they will also accumulate knowledge. Now, the challenge is they may not know how bad the decisions they're making are, and it's much easier with AI agents for those decisions to actually result in some very seriously bad outcomes because you can just get so much further now. But I think that that is going to improve. I'm not terribly concerned about that. So if you are new in this industry, that is just fine. And actually, I should say you can be new and be gray haired too. So welcome.
Sure. Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you're
Yeah.
a career switcher.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was really interesting about the story you mentioned earlier was that you had this guy who was very in touch with a handful of departments, and
Hmm.
then kind of use that knowledge as a proxy for these other departments, and that didn't work out very well. And so, the one thing that you called out specifically is that you have to talk with them and engage with them in such a way that they are bought into this thing that you're building. Um, and I think that's an important thing to call out that depending on the product that you're building, sometimes you're selling to the boss, and then they're going to make all their underlings use the software. And your goal really should be to help those underlings be successful, even though the one you have to sell to is the boss.
Hmm.
And so, like, how do you make sure that when you're having these conversations, you're inviting all of the stakeholders rather than just the person who's going to be buying it from
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that I've done it is to tell the boss that many of the ones that I've been a part of that have either failed or just kind of had a rough go of it, are the ones where I'm not allowed to talk to people, where I'm
you.
not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
go talk to people that I need to talk to get their feedback. The ones that go really well are when I can involve people. That doesn't mean that the boss's opinions don't matter. They obviously will matter, and they will be the key stakeholder, and that's totally fine. But if you want your people to adopt this software and to feel like they have some ownership there and actually use it, then I have to be able to talk to them. And that goes really well, like, because it ties it to sort of like, it's not that I don't trust their judgment, but I want this project to succeed. So do they. I mean, ultimately, with consulting, at least, a lot of times this is just them wanting to feel like they made the right decision in hiring us, and feel like we're going to make them look good, in front of their bosses, in front of their stakeholders, in front of their team, whatever, that they brought in this really amazing team. And now, obviously, we're not a huge company. We're a little over 30 people, but at this point, I can't be that involved with every project.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even really my role anymore. That's really more my business partner Todd, and Gant does sales, and I'm more on the tech side and kind of working with that. But this is what I try to like teach our team that what they need to be doing. It's no matter what, though, you can't change company culture from the outside. It's even hard to do from the inside, especially if you don't have that sort of agency. And so I always say it starts at the top. You have to have good leadership. You have to have good communication, good culture. Those things start at the top. Like, what will the leader tolerate versus what do they not? And so you can only do what you can do. But this is how I've approached it as a consultant, and it's typically worked pretty well. There have been some projects where we're just simply not allowed to talk to people we need to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're willing to pay us for months and months and months to do less effective work, because they just won't let us talk to people. And well, as long as they're making that decision knowing the trade-offs that they're making, then I guess that's on them. But that's how I approach it.
Yeah, yep, that makes a lot of sense. That leads me to another thing I was wondering. How do you deal with bad requirements? Like, you're in meetings with stakeholders, maybe they're really enthusiastic and we're talking about building an MVP, and they have all of these huge ideas that they want to do, and you're like, man, adding that integration is going to add a lot of time to this and a lot
Yeah.
of complexity. And we're not even sure if we understand this problem space quite right. Like you're often, in my experience, people will just throw a bunch of solutions at you without actually really you understanding the problem and knowing that like, so what do you do? How do you deal with bad requirements?
So the thought that came to me as you were asking this is, as a dad, and you're a dad as well. I have one daughter who really loves stuffed animals, and if it was up to her, she'd have 200 of them. So when she wants a new one, uh, what I tell her is, okay, which one are you going to donate to someone else?
Nice.
So now it's not so much like a decision about do I want this or not, because obviously she does. Relatively, it's balancing against the trade-off of what else has to go, because there's only
Mm,
so much room in her room.
mm,
Um, and so it'd be similar for like a backlog or something like that. It's like I I mean, I'm okay to being like, it's a great idea. You know your users, you know what you want. Like, that's awesome. That's a really cool thing. Where does this rank? What does this push below the line? What won't get shipped? That usually gets them thinking like, wait a minute here. Let's put that in phase two. Ends up being phase
mm,
five, but
mm.
let's put it in phase two. And um and that's within the constraints. Now, I think it'll still be a thing, even with faster velocity with agents. We
Mhm.
can't just have it all, because it's not just the agent. It's obviously it's QA, it's
Yeah,
product, it's
well, and
design, it's
and I
all those.
think a really important piece to that too is that, if you just try to build it all up front, you'll get to the end and realize you built the wrong thing. And so by
Mm-hmm.
doing kind of a phased
Yeah.
rollout, you once you get there, you're like, oh, actually, we should be doing it this way instead.
Yeah, with my game I ran into that, even with all my experience. The game is really the first product where I have spent multiple years now thinking about and working on and owning 100%. And there were early things that I spent a lot of time on that when I eventually got to where I knew what I wanted, the early stuff didn't really, it was kind of a waste of time. Like, I should have focused on the stuff that I knew needed to happen, and not like future proofing or building out this big system for various things, because I ended up removing a lot of it. I've rewritten the lobby system. I think it's 11 times now, and I'm not. That's not an exaggeration. It's actually 11 times. I'm pretty sure, and that's crazy. But I started too early. I did it way too many times, and then now I've only maybe rewritten it twice in the last 6 months. So that's good,
Yeah,
and I'm
making
pretty happy with what I
progress.
have.
Yeah, that makes me think it's a very similar sort of thing as premature optimization, right? So like we're going to build out the infrastructure of Facebook or
Yeah,
something where
right.
you're not Facebook scale, right?
No.
I think that there's this a concept of premature ideas,
Hmm.
where like this idea, maybe it's a great idea, and like often I think we're like, oh no, I know these users, I know this situation or whatever, but maybe this other thing that you're working on that is totally unrelated ends up being a better primitive to solve that particular problem than the solution that you thought of in the first place. So focusing and iterating, tightening the feedback loop, all of that, I think can help you avoid going down a path of a premature idea.
Yeah, I have an example of that in my game. So I have uh, AI pilots, NPC pilots, because AI is overloaded now. But when you're flying, you in Apache, you'd have two pilots, pilot and co-pilot, and either one of them can be an NPC, not MCP, an NPC that or both of them can be, and depending on what seat they're in and like what their responsibilities are, they actually coordinate with each other, or they coordinate with you, the human pilot. Or you can have two human pilots. So there's a lot of different kind of ways that this could be structured. And I had all these ideas around how I was going to make them more or less effective based on maybe stress, maybe their health, or their experience level, or some hidden attributes, sort of like
Hmm.
Madden or NBA 2K or something. There's like these attributes of like how good are you at shooting the gun or whatever. Um, and ultimately, a lot of that, like what you said about like there's a better primitive. I had built this distraction thing that would kind of like, they have this like decision loop that they're running, and there's a percentage chance that they'll get distracted and do nothing. Like they won't make a decision, right? They're supposed to shoot and they don't, or they're supposed to make, target something new and they don't. They're supposed to punch out some flares to try to confuse an incoming missile. They don't. They got distracted. They got whatever. And it wasn't just distraction though, because I found out that like, wait a minute, this can just work for any of these things. Like if they're less experienced, then they get distracted more often. If they're injured or they're tired, they get distracted more often. I can just use the same thing over and over and it gets the job done. Like they react sort of like they're slower to react. And so I didn't figure that out until well into the process. And I'm glad I didn't actually go down the route of building out all these other things. That was actually one of the first things I built. And I was like, this can be used for everything. So I totally agree. I think that's exactly, you have to defer these questions. I tell clients, like, let's not make decisions that we don't have to right now when we know the least. Like we're going to know more later. So let's make decisions later when we know more.
Yeah, I really like that. And this is actually why I often say do it the hard way first. For that exact same reason. The version of you today knows a lot less about this problem than the version of you in the future when you've been wrestling with it manually for a while. So I've had a lot of family members come to me, and there's a neighbor that I've got who came to me and said, "Hey, I have this app idea. I'm sure everybody listening can relate to that."
Oh yeah.
And most of the time I just say, how can you do this without building software? Just like cobble together Google Calendar and Zoom and whatever else that you need, and like a Google form for people to sign up and a Venmo, like just put all those pieces together manually. And once you've confirmed that you have people who are interested, paying customers, whatever, then you understand the problem and can write software to solve the actual problems you're experiencing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And these are all things that us as engineers are going to have to learn to make this transition. And there's no doubt there's a transition coming. You can drag your feet all you want, and you can maybe try find companies that will, hang on to low AI or no AI for a while. But the market demands are going to change, and we do need to make this transition. That's why I was actually really excited about the direction you were going, Kent, because when you were talking about, like, you were thinking about, like, I could teach like specifics of Claude Code, or I could teach specifics of Cursor or something. And those are important to know, but they change so often, where like, just like Jim Day 35 years ago doing the game design for this game, still relevant today. He's still giving me good advice today. This is something that feels more durable. Nobody knows the future, who knows? Maybe there'll be a product designer AI that comes out that just kind of shocks us all or whatever. But right now, that's really what it feels like. There's going to be a lot of value there. And it's not like our engineering knowledge is completely useless, just like all the other transitions we've made in our lives. I feel like it's still a useful thing. But we definitely need to be making ourselves more aware of and more capable of making more product, even if it's at a mini level. Maybe you're not doing the full product, but you're taking more high level instructions and, again, making decisions at a lower level.
Yep, 100%. Well, Jamon, this has been a super fun and interesting conversation. I want to ask you if there's anything that we didn't talk about that you really want to talk about. And I'll also want to wrap up with on the page for this episode, there's a homework section with little check boxes. So what should go in that homework section? What's something active, like specific, that somebody could do? It doesn't have to be big, just a specific action that they can take to improve their product sense.
That's a tough one for me, because it's something that I've learned kind of the hard way over my career. But I will say, I think the thing that has been the best for me is to actually sit and watch someone who's non-technical try to use a feature that you built. And you'll learn a lot. Like or even if it's not a feature that you built, like watching someone. I watch my wife, who is non-technical. She's smart, but she's not like in tech all the time. Try to use some of these apps, and the way that she'll tap on something 3 times before it stops animating or something, and it won't do anything because it's animating and it's not actually ready to like tap on. And but she just, tap tap tap, okay, now it went. That's the sort of thing that I think you're going to start getting a sense for the user experience, and you're going to notice things that just drive you nuts, and it's going to make you better at like, okay, I'm going to make better decisions. I'm going to prioritize things better.
Very good. Yeah, that's awesome homework piece of advice there. Jamon, what's a good way for people to follow along with you and keep up with what you're working on?
Yeah, I'm still active on Twitter at Jamon Holmgren, and you can also follow along with my game development journey at Jamon Games. But also, if you're not a Twitter person, you can go to my website. I do post updates there, or Steam. If you go to steam.jamon.games for my helicopter game. And then, of course, Infinite Red. We're still doing React Native. We're still building mobile apps, all those things. So you can follow along in all of our socials there as we navigate this transition as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jamon. Really appreciate all of the awesome insights that you've got and shared with us. And we'll see you everybody in the next one. See ya.
Thanks for having me on, Kent. Bye.
Thank you.